Lord of the Mysteries, Episode 9. The series keeps ramping up. I really think there was a sort of big hurdle at the beginning where the pacing was too fast and the information was being dumped on the viewer perhaps a bit too overwhelmingly, but I do think that it's unfortunate that maybe those first few episodes filtered a lot of people, because I think, once again, like I said last week, this episode, the pacing is noticeably slower from how it was at the beginning, and the stakes are higher, the story keeps getting more and more interesting, you're getting more attached to the characters. I just think that it ramped up so well. Lord of the Mysteries is so good every single week, and I'm just sad that so many people just watched, let's say, the first 2 to 3 episodes and just dropped it, because it's really starting to cook with fire. The episode starts with Klein being adamant about sharing the information he gained from the previous emperor, or should I say the previous emperor many generations back, about the acting method, and he wants to share this with the rest of the Nighthawks. And just as he's thinking about doing this, Daly enters his room, and just as many people are already very excited with the idea of Daly entering their room, she did not enter actually physically by herself. She sent a ghost head of some kind, which I'm assuming is an ability of the higher sequence of the Gravedigger. I think that was the one. But either way, she does that, and now mostly everyone is turned off except that one guy that's even more excited now. Ooh, a ghost head, that's my jam. Daly opens up about the acting method as well, and it is obvious to her that Klein knows because he has progressed so fast. He has fully digested the Sequence 9 potion in 2 months, and if you recall a few episodes back, I think Klein mentioned that full digestion was between 4 months and 1 year, and please correct me if I'm getting the figures wrong, I'm remembering this off the top of my head, but I remember that was a peculiar scene because the Hanged Man was a bit surprised that it took as long as 4 months, and while Justice was surprised that it took as little as 1 year, so that was just both their different perspectives. I remember that reaction in particular, but either way, his lower estimate was 4 months, but even then he managed to half that to just 2 months, so that is just astonishing progress. Daly reveals that the acting method is not really shared by the church because of some reason, and I'm sure that we will get into this later, and this I found to be very peculiar because one would think that it is in the interest of the church to have members that are stronger and stronger so that they can better combat other threats and perhaps even other organizations, but it seems that's not the case. Perhaps there is a higher risk of going berserk if one progresses too fast, or maybe they are just worried about having members that are just too strong to control. This was also one of my questions, and this is likely better delved into in the novels, and they just didn't have time to adapt this in the Donghua, but they didn't really do much of a background check on Klein, and it always surprised me because if they're going to offer literally powers of divinity to a person, I would guess that they would have a bit of a background check to see if this is not a person of dubious moral character, to see if they have good intentions, and if they will do good with the powers that they have received. So that was always a question of mine, and perhaps that is one of the many reasons why the church does not easily share the acting method, because they want to make sure that the members are up to the task not only in terms of capability and temperament, but also in terms of good intentions, if they're good people and will not misuse their higher sequence powers. Leonard has a little bit of a slip of the tongue and mentions that Klein digested the potion very quickly, which makes Klein assume that Leonard also knows about the acting method. He is also privy to this information, but once again, I think that Leonard is one of the most suspicious characters in the series. He clearly knows a lot more than he lets on, but at the same time, and this is my interpretation with the information we have up until now, I think it's relatively obvious that he's not as intelligent as Klein, or at least he does not seem so. Maybe he's pretending to be dumb, which is also a form of intelligence in itself, make the enemies underestimate you. But he clearly seems to be very knowledgeable, but perhaps not as scheming and even Machiavellian as Klein. At Daly's advice, and because this was his original intent to begin with, he shares the acting method with the rest of the Nighthawks, because he clearly doesn't see any benefit in gatekeeping this information, and perhaps it would be more advantageous to him if his fellow members were also stronger. So I thought that was a very neat detail, whereas before I think Klein was a little bit more secretive in keeping information to himself, and there's still a lot he won't tell. Obviously, he didn't tell them about the Grey Fog, for example, or the Taro Tarot Club, which I'm always wondering if he's going to invite one of them to the Tarot Club. That would be an interesting development. I think that's bound to happen at some point. Maybe Dunn, who knows? Dunn doesn't seem super talkative, but anyway. But now he shares the acting method with all of the others, and once they have that knowledge, unless there's a sort of higher sequence to remove memories, I think that's that. They are keeping this knowledge with them forever. I found old Neil's reaction to be super funny. He was just stun-locked at how much of a prodigy Klein is, and he wishes he met him 20 years earlier, which maybe would have changed a lot of things, especially as we unfortunately see later in the episode. But it is not clear to me yet if Klein is truly a prodigy, if he's being boosted by his own capabilities and perhaps also the capabilities of the Grey Fog, or if he was just privy to information that a lot of people don't have access to. So it is still up to be determined if he's truly a prodigy, but up until now, it's looking good. And then they introduce one of the higher ranking members of the church, and oh my, this was directed so well. This guy just feels like such a big deal. His aura was off the charts. And if we think about it numerically, he's a sequence 5. That doesn't seem much higher than sequence 7. One would expect that a higher sequence would be much more imposing. But no, sequence 5 is already apparently a very well-respected thing. Because if we think about it, we don't really know anyone with such a high sequence up until this point in the story, and they made him seem like he was just a god among men. They made him seem like he was just so much more powerful and imposing than all of them. They really sold his sequence very well, which is very interesting to me, and once again comes back to my question from a few episodes back, that it seems like the sequence levels jump in power exponentially. It's just a huge growth, because Klein in this very episode, from sequence 9 to sequence 8, it was already quite a big jump, and if sequence 5 feels this strong, then what is up with the higher sequences? Because that is surely going to be crazy. He interrogates Klein because Klein is suspicious, which is understandable even if uncomfortable for our main character, but this interrogation scene was a bit weird, and I'm wondering if they cut a bit of context from the novel here, because the questions that he asked Klein either lied or just omitted the truth and didn't answer. Like when he asked, for example, do you have any secrets that you are unwilling to share? It's like, yeah, Klein has a bunch of those, from minor things like what he did in the previous episode, that little bit of a prank to get the sun charms, to just the Grey Fog and him being isekai'd from another world. Klein has a lot of secrets, and a lot of those questions were very relevant, and Klein didn't seem to really answer any of them, but all of a sudden he's in the clear because he's not being possessed by an evil spirit, which I guess is also true. But that interrogation scene felt a little bit strange to me, and maybe the higher ranking dude, maybe he knows that Klein is a bit suspicious, but not with evil intent, and maybe that's enough to let him go free for now. Maybe that's just what I got from that scene, because a lot of those questions Klein really didn't answer. And then, much like Daly said in the first few minutes of the episode, all of the members of the Nighthawks, who Klein revealed the information about the acting method to, are made to swear an oath to not share it with anyone, and praise the lady! And this scene, it actually made me think that I don't know a lot about half of these characters. I mean, I know Klein, I know Dunn, I know Neil, I know Leonard, I even know the other dude whose name I'm forgetting right now. So see, I don't even know him that well, but I don't think we've delved much into the female characters, so I think half of this crew is memorable and the other half, it hasn't really been explored. So I'm wondering if it was just cut content from the novel where these characters are just not relevant. Maybe Klein had some side missions with them that were just cut, or maybe they are just not that relevant to the story, and maybe that's okay as well. And then we get into the long-awaited moment of the clown potion, a potion that many people on the internet have drank. But no, seriously, we get the clown potion, and now it is not done with old Neil, maybe because old Neil doesn't know how to concoct the potion, or maybe because Klein is already enough of a beyonder to do the potion himself. Either way, he does the potion in front of the higher ranking dude from the church, and he drinks it, and the animation wasn't particularly suspicious. I was expecting maybe to have a few frames of a clown face or or something a little bit more conspicuous, but none of that happened. We got this sort of blood vessel animation, which I thought was very interesting. I don't know if it's just the potion entering your system or if it has some deeper meaning to it, but I thought it was pretty well done. And finally, Klein is sequence 8. The effects of the potion are immediately noticeable by Klein. He is stronger, he is more agile, much like we saw in old Neil's lesson a few weeks back. Sequence 8 of the clown seems to be mostly a physical enhancement, so he's much stronger now. He also has this idea where he can't do air bullets yet, because he's not a magician, he's not a sequence 7, but he can sort of throw things really fast and sharply, much like paper, so he has this idea of carrying around a bunch of tarot cards that he can throw, which is very thematically fitting, if I do say so myself. And also he has the power of precognition, which was surprising to me actually. I don't remember, maybe I just forgot, but did old Neil mention that in the lesson? Because that came as a bit of a surprise to me, and that just seems incredibly useful. Once again, I think just from sequence 9 to sequence 8, the jump in abilities just seemed exponential. This was just such a big jump. And then it seems there's something fishy with old Neil, the man who is always so greedy and so money hungry. He's offering dinner to everyone, and even the other characters are just agape, just surprised that old Neil is offering dinner. And then we get the title card that mentions the Moses ascetic order, the order that was mentioned in the previous episode to have ties to the pathway of old Neil. And immediately I'm like, God damn it, really? I'm spoiled by the title card. But I already know something fishy is happening with old Neil. I already know this is probably going to turn sideways, but really, you're going to spoil me with the title card. Come on, this is just dirty work by the episode. I'm going to be honest, I was just a tiny bit pissed. That was dirty. That was very dirty. And I had just a tiny sliver of hope because the Moses ascetic order worships knowledge, which, okay, that doesn't seem inherently evil, that doesn't seem like such a bad thing on itself, and their motto is do as you wish, but do no harm. Okay, do no harm, that sounds good, sounds positive, that's not malicious, I enjoy it, but then they get into old Neil's house, and he's acting very suspicious, and then just a dirty ooze riddled with, I don't know, that seems unhealthy, maybe has some venereal diseases in there, but just a dirty, strange ooze starts coming out of his house, and I'm like, oh boy, this is not going to go well. And this scene is so heartbreaking because we like old Neil. He's one of the most memorable characters, one of the characters we've had the most contact up until this point in the story. And so to see him like this is just so sad. And I don't know how they did it in the novel, but in the Donghua, they almost make Dun the sort of pseudo point of view, which is very interesting. We see things from mostly his perspective, and Klein is mostly just silent observing in the background because he seems to be even more emotionally shaken than Dun, and Dun is just so professional. You can see that he's also emotionally affected, but he does his job anyway because he's that kind of guy. And so they discover that old Neil has unfortunately gone crazy with the whispers of the hidden sage. He wants to revive his wife, something that obviously cannot be done, certainly not this way. And so it's just sad because once again, even the motto of the Moses ascetic order reveals this, do as you wish but do no harm. And it also fits really well with old Neil's personality. Even towards the end, he's possessed, he's gone crazy, but he's not evil, he's not malicious. This whole scene feels so sad because if he just went out on a blaze of glory and got aggressive and tried to attack our main characters, that would be almost better, but this is just pathetic. He's just pleading, please let me go, I won't do anything, I'll just go into the mountains and forget about you and run away and hide. And it's just so pathetic because he's just pleading so much, and there still seems to be a semblance of humanity in there. He's not completely taken over like last episode, for example, where Havre turned into a complete monster. Neil still seems to be halfway there, and that's why this scene is just so heartbreaking. And despite being very clearly shaken by this, Dun just does what he needs to do because, like I mentioned, he's a pro, and so pop! He takes Neil out of his misery, and he takes his glasses and just leaves because the job has been done and now there is more work to do. And what proceeds is one of the most gorgeous funeral scenes that I have ever seen. This whole scene was tremendous. The animation is incredible, it's stunning, and they even do black and white to enhance the emotional effect and the sadness of losing this beloved, greedy, mentor-like character. And it was such a sad scene, and truly, I have to say once again, I think that Lord of the Mysteries really hit its stride after a perhaps roughy bump at the beginning, because I am so invested every single week on these episodes. I think they are so good, the story is becoming so much more compelling, and the animation just takes what is already a very good source material, clearly, even though I haven't read it, just from the story alone I think it's very good, and it's just, the animation just enhances this to just godlike status. I'm just enjoying this so much, it's just so good. And then the funeral scene at the end gets color and gets the sort of scene with birds, which was a bit metaphorical, but also very pretty. And this scene was very pretty, and also perhaps a bit of a lingering of hope in the middle of all of this depression. Perhaps hope that our main character can and will do better, and will hopefully stop these things from happening. The episode ends with a very beautiful phrase from Old Neil: "If I cannot save her, then I shall accompany her." And that is just a very poetic but tragic and yet beautiful ending for Old Neil. I like it a lot, and also something that is very tragic. Not only do we lose this character in canon, but also in the meta sense, we lose Old Neil's lessons, which I was actually shocked about. I didn't know that something bad was going to happen to Old Neil, but I expected the lessons to continue, and yet I think they're cancelled, or maybe some other character will take over. But either way, for this week, there is no Old Neil lesson, and also no Chibi Theater, so no extra content for this week. This episode just has to marinate and be digested by itself, and that's a tough pill to swallow. Overall, I love this episode. I don't want to keep repeating the same thing, but Lord of the Mysteries to me is starting to cook with hot fire, and it keeps getting better and better, and I'm just so hyped for the finale, because I think that if this keeps going up and up and up, I think it's cooking something very special here. I really enjoy that Klein has now, what's the term in Lord of the Mysteries lore? Is it evolve? That's what I'm going to use for now. I'm really happy he has evolved to sequence 8. I think that after he got the recipe and more or less the knowledge of the clown sequence, I think if it was too abrupt, it would feel unsatisfying and just anticlimactic. But if it dragged on for too long, it would just frustrate the reader, or in my case, the viewer. So I think 2 or 3 more episodes of this I don't think would have been palatable. I think the viewers would just want the next thing, the next high. But I think doing it like this, I think it was satisfying. So I enjoy that he has finally evolved, finally upgraded, and hopefully he starts being less clumsy and overall less of a dork when fighting, because he's very dorky. We even saw last episode, he's just pretty much won by tripping over and just off balancing the vile beast. So I'm hoping that he gets a little bit more cooler, a bit more smooth in combat now. I think that the clown being more or less a physical sequence, I think is very fitting for him, just what he needed. And I'm looking forward to the tarot cards. I'm looking forward to see him fight with the cards, because that's just going to be super cool. And with this level of animation, those choreographies in the fight are going to look amazing. I am very curious to see what Klein does now though, because he already has gotten half the progression we can expect to see, at least from this branch of the Nighthawks, because for example Dunn is sequence 7, and in 2 months Klein is already sequence 8, so only 1 level to go. And so I am curious to see if sort of this zone, this branch of the Nighthawks is capped at sequence 7, if Klein is perhaps going somewhere else, if his efforts are going to be redirected to another direction, if he's going to go to someplace with stronger people, stronger sequences. And I'm wondering if he's going to prioritize sequence 7 that much, if he wants to raise his level also to a magician to get stronger powers, or if he's going to prioritize the mysteries in this city and going to solve a lot of the things relating to Azik and relating to whatever that a creepy cult wants to do in the city. So I'm very curious to see where this heads now, if he's going to prioritize himself or the city, and if the church wants to take him somewhere else, because he clearly shown that he's special, or at least that he's privy to more information than he lets on. As a final note, I will be sad if there are truly no more mysticism lessons. I don't mind if it's still old Neil. Yes, he's not alive in the canon story, but this is extra content. I wouldn't mind it in the slightest if old Neil's lessons continued. But if they do switch to another character, that's fine as well. But I just wish that the lessons continue, because I think it's a very neat way of perhaps including the more boring and pace-breaking exposition dumps that they don't want to put in the regular episodes, but are still appreciated by viewers that are more into Lord of the Mysteries, like myself. Viewers that perhaps don't have the time to read the novels as of this moment, but still want to learn more and don't want to risk going on the wiki and just spoiling the whole story. So I really appreciated the lessons. I hope they continue. The Chibi Theaters, it's not the first time we've had an interrupted week, so I'm guessing that it will continue at some point. That is just fine, whatever. I really enjoyed the lessons, and I hope they come back. So this was it for me. Be sure to leave, as always, your thoughts in the comment section below. Like, subscribe, and ciao.